Okay.
Hello, everybody. I am Silas House, and I'm very happy to be here with Jason Isbell. We are here on behalf of Oxford American, the great magazine that I know many of you, I hope all of you read. And well, thanks for being with us today, Jason.
Thank you, Silas. Pleasure to talk to you.
You too. It's good to see you. Last time I saw you, it was a whole different world, wasn't it?
Yes, we could be close to each other and sit and talk in the same room. It was amazing.
Right.
Yeah, it's strange. This is strange, but we're all right. You know, we're healthy, relatively sane. You know, we got a 4-year-old, so that keeps us busy, and we're out away from town, so we got a lot of space to roam around. So we've been outside a lot.
I've seen that you all are always, creating something, coloring, drawing, playing. So on one hand, I can imagine being stuck with a little one during all this, but on the other hand, I'm sure it's been a joy in lots of ways.
It really has. And I mean, we just have one child, so it's not like we're burdened by a whole awful lot of work with her. She's easy. And, you know, she's 4. And at this point, Amanda would have been on tour for the last 2 months, and I would be leaving this week. And you know, even though Mercy usually goes with me when I go on tour, it's still, you know, this is time that we would not have gotten otherwise. So we're trying to look at it from a positive perspective, because she won't be that age for very long, you know.
Yeah, mine are 22 and 24 now, so I'm missing them.
Yeah, every single stage that goes by, you know, I simultaneously miss the last one and think this one is the best. So it's just good that we're all able to spend this time together. You know, it's not as good as if the world were back to normal, but we'll take it.
Well, congratulations on the album. I think it's one of your best, maybe your best. I know that I've seen lots of people saying that, so I'm.
Well, thank you. It's exciting. It's a different kind of exciting than usual, because we usually be out touring and playing these songs for people and getting to see, you know, firsthand how people are affected by the record. But it still means a lot to me to be able to put something like this out into the world, because I know people need music right now, and you know, I'm proud of the record. I think that we did a good job. I think it's a good set of songs, and you know, I'm happy to see that it resonates with folks.
Well, I think you're right. People do need all of that they can get right now, and I wondered if there was ever any talk among, your whole label and all that about postponing the album until you could tour behind it.
You know, we thought about it. I mean, just from a business perspective, we try to consider all of our options and land on the best one. But really, I think what won out for me was the fact that, you know, I try to make albums based on where I am currently. And I don't go back and take songs from 10 or 15 years ago and try to rework them. You know, I just start fresh every time. And I spent a year and a half before we recorded Reunions writing these songs to reflect what was on my mind at that particular point in time, and actually document, you know, a part of my own life. And for that to happen, you know, once it's recorded and it's done, I feel like it needs to come out, you know, and waiting another year or however long we have to wait would have been really, really disappointing to me, because I would feel like, you know, I will have moved on by then. A year from now, I'm going to be concerned with very different things. And you know, it would just be really deflating for me to have to wait. And I might even feel like I had lost touch with the person that wrote those songs in the first place.
Well, one thing about it, it'll give people plenty of time to. There's so many great songs on here to sing along with, so everybody.
Oh
will,
yeah.
by the time you're touring with them,
I thought about that yesterday, man. I thought I was thinking about some of the songs, and I thought, man, people are going to really know the words to these, so that'll be an extra bonus for when we get to play shows again.
Yeah, and especially a song like "Be Afraid." You know, it has that great rousing chorus. I can just hear a whole stadium singing that song. It'll be.
Yeah. A stadium with like 600 people in it because they're all having to stay 10 feet away from each other, but it's a stadium nonetheless.
Well, last time we talked, you told me that this album was populated by ghosts, and I loved the way you phrased that. So I wonder if you would just talk about that, just for the people who are watching to know what you mean by that.
Yeah, the first song that I wrote that wound up going on the album was Only Children. And I was over in Greece with my friend Will Welch and my wife Amanda and Will's wife Heidi. And we, all of us are writers of some form or another. And so we were sitting around and we were, reading or singing to each other what we were currently working on. And it occurred to me that that just doesn't happen as much now as it used to when I was young. And uh, used to be there, at the end of the night on Friday or Saturday, there'd be a circle of people sitting in somebody's house or out on a porch or something, playing songs for each other. And I missed that a lot. And I started thinking about people from that period in my life and started thinking about who I was at that time. And, a lot of these sort of ghosts started reappearing. And it wasn't really anything that I conceptualized from the start. It's just sort of the natural progression of how it happened when I was writing songs. And at one point, I thought, man, I got the word ghost in here a lot. This is on this record a whole lot. And then as I continued writing, I started thinking to myself, well, what are those ghosts? Why are they there? And um, why is this a theme that keeps presenting itself to me? And I think the reason for that um, is, usually when you see a ghost it's usually somebody from your past, either it's a ghost of yourself or it's somebody that you were in some type of a relationship with or somehow connected to. And there was something that you missed somewhere along the line. And, in all the really great ghost stories, the ghost is coming back to you to tell you, you didn't understand this about me, or this is something that you got wrong about the time that we spent together, something that you missed. And that appealed to me a whole lot as a songwriter because, I finally got to this point after being sober and feeling like a more of a functioning member of society for 7.5 years at the time when I wrote these songs. It occurred to me that I felt comfortable and I felt safe going back and revisiting who I was back then, the ghost of myself in that way. I hadn't, up until that point, really felt safe doing that because I felt like there was a danger of me turning back to my old ways, turning back into that person. So when I was writing these songs, I really felt like I could come to terms with those people and those relationships, and some of them passed on, and then some of them I'm not in contact with anymore. But I was able to reconnect with those stories.
Well, you've always had that self-examination in your songwriting, and I think that shows up even more on this album, I think, than ever. Right there, the opening song is "What Have I Done to Help?" It's
Yeah.
deep self-examination, and then it goes on throughout the record. Is that something you're conscious of, or does that just happen with your writing?
I think that's normally where my head's at, so it comes out in the songs. I think I'm sort of always looking for a purpose to doing this. It's outside of just a lifestyle or um, you know some sort of financial or career success. I'm always looking to find some kind of deeper meaning, because it's I'm not easily satisfied. I need to know that what I'm doing resonates on some level that is higher in that way, make it more like a calling than a job. And for me to do that, I think I've landed on this idea of how do I get better at being a person. And the songs wind up reflecting that, and there's so much inspiration to mine for in just that subject. I mean, it's you can take that with you into any story, and you can think, what are the wins and losses here? How did I use this experience to make myself more of a fully functioning human being? And a lot of that I think comes from the time that I've spent working on my own addiction recovery, but I was doing it before. I was writing songs about this before that ever happened. I think maybe growing up where I did and in the way that I did, there's a combination of this sort of ethical code, um, combined with the fact that I still view myself as a very worldly person, and I get a lot out of traveling and experiencing new things and viewing people in a way that's not judgmental. So it's sort of this combination, and I know you work with that too in your work, but it's like a combination of keeping some semblance of the ethical code that I grew up with, but transferring it into a current existence that's not um, um, judgmental and not dismissive of other people in the way that a lot of the folks that I grew up around learned to be.
Uh, yeah, that was one thing I wanted to ask you about was um, Dreamsicle and Only Children, and you're going back to that place you grew up on a few of the songs on here. And I always feel a connection to other people who are raised in small little rural places, especially if it's a southern town. So I'm just wondering, what was the best and the worst parts of being raised in Green Hill, Alabama?
Well, the best part was the fact that I had this close connection to my extended family. Something that probably arose out of necessity a couple of generations before I came along. They needed to be connected in the same way that immigrant families sometimes need to be connected when they come to the United States. We needed each other on a very fundamental survival level, and that was still, culturally ingrained in us by the time I came along. So I spent a lot of time with grandparents and aunts and uncles, and people who cared a lot about me, in ordinance with the family code. That's combined with the music, which I think the music thing was just a direct offshoot of that. I think the reason that I grew up so surrounded by music and musicians, was because I was close to my family, and because that was something that they could do together. And through the years, through the generations, that had been cultivated as something that helped the family to grow and to deal with their issues and to bond with each other. So that was just a natural part of my upbringing, and that's something that I couldn't do without now. I wouldn't be the person that I am without that. But also there was a sort of fear that everybody shared down there, and this kind of fear of other, fear of the outside world, or fear of people who looked different than them, or behaved differently than them. And on one level, I understand where I believe that fear came from. I think it also came from survival in a lot of ways, but I think it was something that wasn't necessary anymore. I don't think that people in that small town needed to be so afraid of people who were different or places that were different. And so when I left to go on tour, I remember going to New York for the first time, and people in my family and people close to me in the neighborhood saying, "Oh, you're going to hate it. Those people are all assholes. They're going to treat you terribly." Well, when I got to New York, it was just a few months after the September 11th attacks. And that's the first time I ever went up there. And those people were not assholes. at that point, especially, they were not. They were grieving, and they were, you know, in a lot of pain, and they were afraid, and they were very kind and very open, and very glad that somebody from Alabama would be there in that city at that point in time to play music for them. And the fear, I think we could have cast that off uh, a long time ago. I don't think it was still necessary in the 80s in Alabama where I was growing up. But there were the powers that be. Uh, Sometimes they learn how to manipulate that, and I think we're seeing a lot of it right now. People who are in charge, they look at these small towns in this sort of like ingrained, almost inherited fear that these people have, and they think, well, they don't know that they don't need this right now. They still have it. They're still afraid, so I'm going to use it to get what I want, and then they can steer folks. And I think that's where a lot of people in small towns are really acting against their own best interests, whether it be politically or just culturally or socially, because they don't realize that you don't have to be so afraid of all these things anymore. Somebody's using that against you.
Yeah, if people out there, I'm sure people out there watching already know it, but I think Cumberland Gap, which is on your last album, is such a great articulation of everything you're talking about, right?
Thank you.
All that fear and the way it plays into the economy and et cetera, politics and all that. But I can relate to all that so much. And you and I both grew up going to small little sort of fundamentalist churches. I think that played a lot into that fear of the other and all that too, don't you?
For sure. Oh yeah. I mean, it was called the tree of knowledge for a reason. It's like you don't want to learn this stuff. If you find out about all this stuff, then everything's going to go to hell. You included. And there was so much guilt and shame. And like everything else we had down there, every other educational form when I was growing up was striated and regimented for different ages. So like when I was 3 or 4 years old, my parents wouldn't let me watch R-rated movies. My parents wouldn't talk to me about their marriage problems when I was 7 or 8. They said, "Oh, you're not. This could affect him in a negative way. He could take on more of this than he understands and be confused by it." But man, they didn't do that in church, buddy. You went to the same church as the guy who just got out of prison and needed to keep from murdering anybody else. And you're a 5-year-old kid hearing the same sermon he's hearing, and there's nobody explaining to you. It's impossible to explain fire and brimstone to a 5-year-old child. So you take that with you and you go home and you just, beat yourself over the head with it until next Sunday. And then you come in and you get some more of it. And none of it anywhere along the line is ever being taken apart and understood by a 5 or 6 or 7 or 8-year-old child. You got to sit there and listen to all that, but there's no way they can explain it to you. So you wind up with this guilt and this shame that, maybe an adult could handle, maybe, but for sure a kid can't handle it. And there's no church for 3-year-olds. There's no Pentecostal church for 3-year-olds where they're like, yeah, hell's bad, but we're just going to color today. They don't do that. It's all the same message. Don't matter how old you are or how smart you are. It's the same message.
Yeah, my two main fears as a child were being left behind in the rapture or being possessed by the devil.
Yeah. It's like spiders and like this the eternal damnation of the human soul. Okay, one of these makes sense for a 5-year-old. The other one doesn't.
Well, speaking of children, I wanted to ask you about women are always asked, how do you balance being on the road and being a traveling musician and having a child? But men are rarely asked that.
That's true.
So I wanted to ask you that because talk about.
You don't balance it, you know, you do everything that needs to be done as a parent, and then in the time and the energy that you have left, you put it into your work, you know. Um, and I mean, that's how I do it. I know other people have done it differently. What I try to do is, you know, I try to do the best work I possibly can, you know, when I sit down to work, and that, I think, combined with the fact that I own most of my own operation, makes it possible for me to spend a lot of time and a lot of energy on just being a parent and a husband. And I think that would probably be different if I was on somebody else's record label or had a different publisher. You know, if I hadn't paid close attention and taken those risks when I did, you know, it would be a lot harder for me to make it all work and still feel satisfied at the end of the day.
Well, having a child changes everything, of course, but how's it changed your writing?
Um, it didn't it didn't change what I viewed as right and wrong, but it gave me more motivation to be vocal about it, you know. Um, so where I don't know that would have written a song like "Be Afraid," or what have I done to help if I didn't have a child, you know. Because then you know you have a kid, and like Amanda, my wife, has said, you know, everybody becomes somebody's child to you
Mhm.
after that, and you feel, I think, more motivated. In my case, I felt more motivated to speak my mind, and, you know, at the very least, just do it to set an example for my own child, even if I don't think it's going to have any kind of effect on society at large. But just from the actual craft of writing, you know, it gives you this new perspective. And I mean, you know, it's like going, like when you hire somebody new in the band and you go to all these towns and venues that you've played 1,000 times in the past, and the new person is so excited to be at this place, then you start remembering, oh yeah, this is a pretty cool place. I remember the first time I came here, how excited I was. And, you know, having a small child is like that, but extended to the whole world. It's like, you know, if you pay any attention to them at all, you're going to be reminded, you know what, that sunflower is pretty amazing. I've just been looking at them for my whole life up until now, and like, that is a crazy looking flower. That's really cool. And then, you know, you go out in the yard or out in the garden, and you're like, you're right, this is a beautiful day, you know. And it gives you that kind of new set of eyes sometimes, and that awareness is always the best thing to have for any kind of a writer, I think.
Oh yeah, that sense of wonder is really
Hmm.
well. There's the last song on the album is a real heart tugger called "Letting You Go," and I predict that will be played at a lot of weddings in the future.
Yeah, maybe so. That was kind of incidental, but you know, when I got done writing it, I thought, oh, there's going to be some weddings using this song. Yeah, it's tough because, you know, and I chose this challenge for myself. This is something I wanted to do, but I wanted to write a song that was about something so very intensely important to me, you know, and do it in a way that wasn't over the top or maudlin or vague or cliched, you know. And that's a real challenge because it's easier when you have some distance, to look at something creatively. But there is no distance between, you know, me and my daughter. There's no way for me to step outside of that frame and look at it from an outside perspective. So, you know, I landed on the approach of just going at it like a classic country songwriter would go at it, like Billy Joe Shaver or something. Like, you know, I'm just going to say these things the way they feel, the way they are, you know, concrete images, and just put the picture down on a piece of paper and let the story do the work. You know, try to take the songwriter out of the equation.
Yeah. It got me. My daughter just got married, and yeah,
Oh yeah,
got it. Well,
yeah.
before I let you go, I wanted to tell you that this is my going to be my summer reading.
Yay, good. Oh, I love it so much, man. I love that book so much. It's so good. And there's
Oh,
so much in there about perspective too, because it's like yeah, Matheson's Shadow Country. Um, and I guess originally his publisher had made him release it as three separate novels, but then finally later on in his life he got the opportunity to do it the way he had originally wanted to. But it's like three separate books, and they're from different perspectives. Like first you get everybody in the community, and then you get the son who's trying to write like a historical account, and then you get the actual first person narrator of the person who's the main character in the book. It's so good. It's so good.
planning on spending a lot of time with it on the lake bank this summer. So,
Good.
well, I hope everybody out there will go out and buy a physical copy of Reunions. It's one that you want to have in your library. I mean, nothing against digital music, but I think some albums you just need a physical copy of. And so I can't encourage everybody enough to do that. Thank you for making another beautiful record. And
Thank you, Silas. Thank you.
and thank you for, speaking up the way you do and standing up for people. I appreciate you. And I know lots of other people do too. So,
Well, thank you. It's I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, I don't think, if I did it any differently.
all right, buddy. Well, you have a good one. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time.
You too. I hope that next time I see you, it's in person. And
Yes, please. Let's do it.
take care.
All right. You too, Silas. See ya.